Welcome to GZERO's coverage of the Canadian election. I'm Tasha Kheiriddin, and it is my great pleasure to be in a conversation today with Gerald and John Baird, both of Eurasia Group, who will be walking us through some of the ins and outs of this campaign. Gerald served as Principal Secretary to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in his first term and was a key architect of the Canadian Liberal Party's modern branding and success. He brings insight into Liberal political strategy and policymaking, as well as the successor to Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney's campaign that is going on now. John Baird is a former Minister of Foreign Affairs under Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and he played a central role in Canada's conservative and foreign trade policy in the early 2010s. He advised the Conservative Party following its defeat in 2019, and he offers an expert view on its current strategy under its leader, Pierre Poilievre. Welcome, gentlemen.
Great to be here
with you.
All right, so let me start with the basic question. And Jerry, I'll ask you first. Why is Canada in an election right now?
That's a great question. It's approximately the time to have an election, of course. But after a change in leadership in the governing party, the polls changed dramatically. I think the leader of the government, the Prime Minister, Mr. Carney, decided that he needed a mandate from the people, not just his party. And here we are. So I think this is the longest minority parliament of our lifetimes, maybe even ever. So it was about time for an election. So that's why we're here. And of course, Donald Trump, for our American listeners, is front and center in this election, and Canada's relationship with the United States, which by my count is about the fifth time in our history it's been the ballot box question.
Yeah, John, let me ask you if you agree with Jerry's assessment of why we're here and how much of a role Trump did play in the calling of this vote.
Well, I think we're in election for one reason, is Mark Carney thought he could cash in on his popularity. You call an election because you think you can win it. And I think the fact that he didn't have a seat in the House of Commons, and the practice would normally be to seek one in short order, and the fact that he wanted to separate himself from the NDP Trudeau era caused him to call a snap election.
All right, let's talk about the main players then. Both of you have mentioned Mark Carney. So Jerry, I will start with you. He is best known internationally as the former governor of the Bank of Canada, Bank of England. He ran for the Liberal leadership earlier this year. Pretty easy race, I would say, for him to win. Who is he and what are his main challenges now?
Well, it's easy to say these things are easy in retrospect, Tasha. I always find that people look back on successful campaigns and say, wow, well, it was always a foregone conclusion. But of course, over Christmas, the polls had Chrystia Freeland as the favorite to be the next leader of the Liberal Party. And lots of people that I know were betting on that outcome. So I think it was a bit of a surprise. What is Mr. Carney known for? It's his economic expertise. And I think that in a nutshell is what has made this election competitive. Canadians are focused on bread and butter issues. I think in the commentariat, you've seen people talk about how on the one hand, there's a Trump tariff issue, and on the other hand, there's a cost of living issue, and one favors one party and one favors the other. I don't actually think that's what's happening out there. I think they're both the same issue, and people know that Trump's economic policy is going to drive cost of living problems in Canada, also in the United States, unfortunately, for his citizens. But they're all the same issue. It's who can fix the economy and deal with Donald Trump. I've never seen a campaign where there's really only one issue on the ballot box, and we have a very close contest that, as usual, will probably come down to who wins the Greater Toronto Area.
Well, sitting in the Greater Toronto Area, as I am right now, I would agree that that's going to be a huge issue in this campaign. And it's an issue for the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre. So, John, take a moment to introduce him. He won his leadership 2 years ago. Unlike Mark Carney, he is a politician of most of his career, actually, has been spent in public office. A young guy, though, he's in his mid-40s. So what does he bring to the table? What are his challenges?
I think he brings a fresh approach. I mean, I think the Liberals want it to be about one issue. They want it to be about Trump. I think the real central issue is, do these people deserve a fourth term? Have they been competent on macroeconomic policy? Have they been competent on immigration? Have they been competent on inflation and the cost of living? And in Canada, Tasha, as you know, elections really matter.
Do you think that would be a bad thing to have a minority government of either stripe when we're dealing with issues like tariffs and Donald Trump?
Well, that concerns me greatly. I almost wish for a majority government over a minority government, regardless of who was leading it, because you had the Liberal Party in bed with the NDP having to sell their soul to the far left. And I don't think that's in Canada's best interest. I think Canada's such a large, diverse country. It needs a strong central government. And when you have such a small number of MPs, it's like the dog wagging the tail wagging the dog. And that concerns me. That's why I'm hopeful and optimistic that Pierre will get a majority national conservative government.
Jerry, what about you? Is a minority going to be a problem if it happens?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that John's right. I think that in particular at this time, it's funny. I'm agreeing with two former Harper cabinet ministers. I just did a podcast with your good friend James Moore, John, where we talked about this topic as well. And I think it's going to be hard enough to negotiate with Donald Trump, having been part of the team that did it the first time between 2016 and 2019. You don't want to have to be checking with a party leader that has, a dozen seats and 8% in the polls in order to put Canada's viewpoint on the table. I think that the country would be very much better served by a strong government of either political stripe now.
But Tasha, when you have the keys to the car, you have the keys to the car. And I served in a minority government for 5.5 years, including being House Leader at the end. There's nothing better than waking up in the morning and being in government when you're a politician. And I suspect both of us would agree with that. The car driver still picks you up every morning when it's a minority parliament.
Yeah, I can't remember who said this to me in the McGuinty years when John and I first met, that the worst day in government is better than the best day in opposition. That's certainly true for any politician.
That was Bill Davis who said that.
Bill Davis, there you go.
Yeah. Former Premier of Ontario, for our American friends who are watching. Jerry, let me ask you.
Ontario is a province of Canada.
You're right. Yes, the big kahuna of our provinces is the biggest one. Let me ask you, Jerry, if Mark Carney wakes up as Prime Minister, how do you see his administration handling relations with the United States?
It's a good question, I think, and I honestly don't think it matters. Both potential prime ministers are going to be facing the same set of problems that we've been talking about this in the country as if it's kind of fearsome entertainment for the past 3 months rather. But I suspect
feels like 3 years, doesn't it? It feels like 3 years. Yeah.
Exactly. This feels like 30 years, but I suspect it's going to get very real very soon, right? That plant closures are already starting. We spend a lot of time traveling back and forth to the United States. I'm sure both John and I do for business reasons. And you go into Pearson Airport on a Monday morning these days, and there are tumbleweeds blowing around. So I really worry about the impact this is going to have on regular people. And I suspect the Prime Minister, be it Pierre Poilievre or Mark Carney, are going to have to deal with a wave of bad economic news heading into the summer. And cushioning that impact on regular people is going to be at the top of either man's mind, I suspect. And then longer term, it's, we're starting from scratch with the United States. I think that the Prime Minister clocked this very clearly the day, Liberation Day, whatever the Trump people called it, that this was a fundamentally different United States today than it was yesterday. And the rules and norms that used to apply in the United States no longer apply. And that means a comprehensive renegotiation of one of the most complex economic and security relationships in the world. So that's the job on the desk of the next Prime Minister.
All right, John, how do you think Pierre Poilievre will handle that if he wakes up as Prime Minister?
I think this guy's got a lot of experience in bringing diverse groups together. He carried the Federal Accountability Act when he was a parliamentary secretary, made a deal with the NDP to get it through. I think he will be able to speak to Trump and his administration. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think we are facing a huge challenge, as Jerry said, so I'm in agreement with that. But I think there's a deal to be had, and it's going to be more comprehensive than just tariffs. It's going to be about defense. It's going to be about border security. It's going to be about drug interdiction. It's going to be about trade. And I'm optimistic that Pierre's up to the challenge to respond to that.
Okay, I have two questions left for you. And the first is going to that about Canada. Is there a sort of silver lining in what Donald Trump is doing for us? Because we have a lot of domestic issues that we have neglected in quite a while, issues such as defense. The economy is really not in great shape. So is this forcing us to up our game in some way? And do you think that something positive can actually come out of the threats that we've been seeing from south of the border? John, I'll start with you.
I don't think there's any positive news to come out of this. I mean,
I'm trying.
Jerry was part of the government in 2016 to try to respond to the challenge of Trump 1. And it was only bad news. You know, it's hard to foresee you coming out with a win. Whoever's in government, it's just a lose-lose proposition. The fact that we'll have a government with a strong mandate, I think, will be important. We've been in the most weak position in the last 4 months. We had the coup within the Liberal Party, the takedown, the resignation, and then the leadership race. And now Parliament's not sitting, so we've been in a pretty weak shape.
Okay, Jerry, Mark Carney's already said he wants to sweep away some cobwebs like restrictions on interprovincial trade and things Canada hasn't tackled in a long time. Do you see any positive outcome of making Canada deal with our internal problems?
It's so minor compared to the negative macro environment that John just described. And as we Canadians know, there are a few facts of life, one of them being winter, the other being if the United States catches a cold, it spreads. And it spreads to us first. That 10,000 kilometer border we have with the United States is an irrefutable fact of life. And I think the economic situation in the United States, most major houses are calling for a recession this year. It's an incredible turnaround in where the United States was just 3 months ago. And that's going to cause a lot of pain for regular Americans and also inevitably for Canadians. So it's going to be a tough time.
I think what's going to really matter on the morning of April the 29th is the relationship between the Canadian Prime Minister and the U.S. President is on the shoulders of the Canadian Prime Minister. It's all in. And you've seen in the past when Brian Mulroney had a great relationship with Ronald Reagan and the first President Bush, we accomplished a lot for our two countries. Prime Minister Chrétien had a very good relationship with President Clinton, and it worked for him. So at the end of the day, it's going to be who can best, in my opinion, who can best get along with the president, who can best work across the border to accomplish things for our country. And I think in the Liberal leader, you see a global elitist, and I think in the Conservative leader, you see a politician who I think has the capacity to reach across the aisle and make a deal.
Okay, so you've scooped my last question, which is morning of the 29th or whenever the new Prime Minister, whoever he is, meets Donald Trump for the first time, is going into that meeting, you could give him one piece of advice. John, I'll start with you. What would it be?
Don't get into a fight like Vladimir Zelensky in front of the media. That would be my first piece of advice. Second one would be prepared. Be prepared on all the files.
Okay, Jerry, what would your advice be?
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Don't get Zelensky'd.
That was as a former diplomat, that was the most spectacular thing I think I've ever seen. I mean, I've been in some bilateral meetings which when the sparks would fly, but I've never seen anything. I've never seen anything like that. And we got to remember we have an overview of how important Canada is. I mean, the United States is like 10 times bigger than us, 20 times more powerful. And it's a very challenging relationship to negotiate. But if the two leaders get along, it makes a huge difference. I mean, I think I was able to work well with Hillary Clinton, for example, and I could get real results for Canada on that. And that's what's going to be up to the two leaders to can they establish a relationship. And with Trump, it's very, very hard. I mean, he's had really challenging relationships with even people within his own party, let alone people in other parties. So it's going to be a high order for the Prime Minister of Canada.
It is. Well, at least we've gotten along in this conversation. So that is good. It shows people of different political persuasions can actually accomplish something. And I want to thank both of you for hashing out the Canadian election today. Gerald Butts, John Baird of Eurasia Group, thank you so much for your insights and happy election.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.